So Mark, you've explained to us that a massive part of your remit is to get extra revenue into Greyhound Racing, which is much, much needed. Do you think at the moment we rely too heavily on bookmakers?
Well, we do. That's the way that the sport is structured at the moment. But obviously, the levy that we get through that is a huge amount. So clearly, that's very important for us. I know that people would like to see that increase, and of course, that's something that would be an ideal. But there are lots of other ways that we can try to bring revenue through the sport. We look at, for example, at the number of bookmakers and online companies that are offering ground racing that are not paid into the levy, and really each and every one of those in reality should be. So that's something we're working on. We've got one that we're just literally in the process of putting a press release together to announce. So that's great because it's another one to add into the mix. And that one came about because they wanted to do some sponsorship in the sport. And quite simply, we said, well, they've got to be paid into the levy, which I believe is the right way to go. It's not fair on those that are paying in if another company comes along and does a lot of sponsorship that are not paying in. So that's great. They're coming on board. They want to do sponsorship. We're going to work closely with them for that. And hopefully there are more opportunities out there to get one or two more in that situation as well.
Do you think we are too insular as an industry, though? Where else do you see potential revenue coming from if we look outside of bookmakers?
Yeah, we do. We have to look outside because we've got to try and get that extra revenue. And you've got to look. I think there's two things for me. One is to look at the sectors that actually have performed quite well during the recent difficulties financially, because there are still some sectors that have performed well in that. And also looking at the industries that are already involved in ground racing, but not necessarily supporting it through sponsorship. So there's two areas, and we're already having conversations with companies in some of those sectors. Very positive conversations. I'm really hopeful that one or two of those can come to fruition. Of course, not everything will. Sometimes you need a bit of luck as well. We'll be looking for companies that not necessarily been involved in ground racing before, but have got a reason to become involved. And we've got to listen to them. That's so important to find out what they're wanting. Gone are the days when you can just contact companies and say, would you like to sponsor this? And they'll say yes and take a table at a meet. It just doesn't work like that. You've got to now listen to sponsors, find out what they're looking for. Are they doing a rebrand of a product? Are they wanting some national exposure that potentially we can offer throughout all the 18 tracks and 19, hopefully, when Shawfield gets back open? So do they want to do something locally? Do they have a new branch opening, for example? There's different things. And unless we're listening to what they want, and unless we're then in a position to be able to offer different types of inventory to them, it won't work. So we've got to be very clear with what we can offer to them, and hence the reason I want to work very closely with the tracks. But also, we've got to understand what they want. And once we can marry the two together, we're hopefully in a position to take advantage of it and get some more sponsorship through.
You mentioned through the recent COVID situation, some companies undoubtedly have benefited, but I'd say across the board, probably more companies have not benefited. So it's probably a very difficult, challenging time for you to come in as commercial director, to be fair. But there's other challenges as well. So when you're approaching external sponsors, do you notice other maybe pushback or challenges, perhaps around welfare? Are companies concerned about that side of the sport or anything else?
Yes, it is something that's raised, certainly as welfare, but I think thankfully we're in such a good position now in terms of the work that's gone on in with regard to the welfare. We're not where we were 5, 10 years ago. We're in a much stronger position. We've got documentary evidence to show how successful the work on the welfare side of it has been from everybody across the sport. And so it's good that we've actually got tangible evidence there that we can push back with on that. And actually show it as a strength because of the work that's gone into it. So I'm not unduly concerned on that side of things at all, because I think we can evidence that when we're speaking to companies.
Do you think that we're proud enough of the product?
No, I don't, in all honesty. I think we're passionate enough, and I think people absolutely love the sport. But I think we could do more about banging the drum and about just, highlighting the positive side of the sport. And everybody talks about wanting to attract a new audience. Of course we do. We'd like to get more footfall across all the tracks and try and support and assist the tracks in trying to do so. Once, of course, they're all back open and restrictions are lifted. But I think we do have to be better in terms of our communication on that. We've got to be more engaging. If we want to get a new, younger audience, then yes, social media is clearly hugely important, but the content on that has to be right. And we've got to be better at it. I think it's quite simple. We have to be better at doing that.
Do you think that's something that the GBGB can do better then in terms of PR and communication?
Yeah, I think there's always room for improvement in that. And I think communication is absolutely vital. And, we work closely with a PR company, and I'd like to be doing more with them. And if I go back to what something we mentioned earlier, 1st of June, we were the first sport to be out there. The 1st of June, we had 4 hours of our free-to-air TV on the evening. I'm not sure enough was made of that. Did people actually realise that live sport was back on and that they could watch that? People within the sport, yes, but we want people outside of the sport. We want that new audience. So we've got to be a bit smarter with what we do, and we've got to make sure that we're engaging very much with the people that are already involved in the sport, because there's the danger that because they've not been able to visit tracks over the last 5 or 6 months, that they can drift away. So we've got to make sure they're engaged. But equally, we've got to get out there and try and attract that new audience as well.
It's always good when somebody new comes into the sport, like yourself. And in my experience, when greyhound racing in Australia, the people that come into the governing bodies there, they're not necessarily greyhound racing lovers, they're experts in their field. And I think that's really beneficial. But on your part, coming into the sport, has anything sort of hit you in the face that you would change?
Well, I do think it can be a benefit, having that fresh pair of eyes, so to speak. The one thing I mentioned there about perhaps we didn't make enough of having the free-to-air TV on that 1st of June. I think that was possibly because people within the sport obviously know all about it, and sometimes it takes a fresh pair of eyes to say, well, hang on a second, not everybody's aware of this, so we should be making more of it. So I think there can be advantages to having that fresh pair of eyes, but you're absolutely right. The reason I was brought in was because I've got experience of working on the commercial side, particularly of sport, and hopefully that I can bring some of that knowledge and experience to this and be successful. It certainly won't be for the want of trying. I'll be out there doing everything I can, and that's the reason I've out and about to date, and I've been across 10 tracks so far, and I've got another couple this week. I'll be at Crayford tomorrow, and it'll be nice to see them opening their doors for the first time. I was at Yarmouth last month when they had a crowd in, and obviously it makes such a difference. So it's great that Sheffield as well opened up on Saturday. So we're starting to get there. There's some green shoots coming through now. We're starting to get some of the tracks open, and obviously the quicker we can get all of them open, the better. And let's really try and make as much as we can of that. Once we've got the restrictions lifted, who knows when that will be, but hopefully we can do as much as we can to help the tracks in working with their local councils to get people back in numbers. And then we've got to try and build on that. And it's all about trying to move the sport forward. Let's try and look at the positives, like I've said, and really try and push the sport forward over the coming months.
If you do manage to be successful in your role and you do manage to get more money into the sport, do you think that can make a big difference? Are financial restrictions an issue in the sport, do you think?
Yeah, finance is massive in whatever sport you're involved in, and obviously I've seen that in roles that I've had previously. So you mentioned earlier, what are the main things that people's concerns are? Well, I think prize money is obviously one that gets talked about an awful lot, and money that's available in the sport. So anything we can do whatsoever to try and increase the revenue in terms of working with the track and working with the promoters, and hopefully that can be a benefit to everybody within the sport.
You certainly sound very enthusiastic. I hope that lasts. My final question to you, do you think you can really make a difference to our sport?
Yes, I wouldn't have taken the role on if I didn't. It's a hugely challenging role, but I obviously believe in myself and really believe that I can be successful in it. And very much hope that with the people I've met so far who've been very positive in the conversations I've had, I've got to say that. And I'm very hopeful that we can pull together and make a difference.
And your message to those people who are so passionate about the sport that are watching this?
Yeah, keep believing. We have got a great sport. You know that better than I do, in all honesty. But we will do everything we can to support everybody throughout the sport. And let's hope we can be successful in that.
Well, Mark, I wish you all the best. Hopefully the banknotes will start rolling in the not too distant future, and we'll see some improvement in that direction. But thank you very much for your time and for
Thanks, Julie. Appreciate that. Good to speak to you.